My boyfriend cheated on me with his roommate. The same roommate he swore was like a sister. Everyone warned me about Blake. Friends, coworkers, even strangers who met him once and somehow immediately saw what I refused to. They all said I was too good for him. I told myself they didn't understand him the way I did. That they were judging him because he was a bartender who played guitar in a cover band instead of having a real job. I thought defending him made me loyal. Blake and I had been together for 2 years. 2 years of excuses, compromises, and me convincing myself that love meant patience. He lived in an apartment with his roommate Tessa, who he described as family. Not just close friends, family. A sister. Someone I supposedly had nothing to worry about. Except everything about her felt wrong. Tessa walked around the apartment in towels like clothes were optional. She cooked Blake breakfast in her underwear. She sat on his lap during movie nights, and played with his hair while looking directly at me. When I brought it up, Blake laughed and said I was being insecure. He said I was projecting my jealousy and trying to control him. So, I swallowed it. If Tessa had a bad day at work, Blake canceled our plans. If I invited him to dinner, he'd leave early because Tessa needed someone to talk to about her ex. When I got promoted at my accounting firm, something I'd worked incredibly hard for, Blake forgot to congratulate me because Tessa had gotten a parking ticket and was upset. Somehow, her problems were always emergencies. Mine were inconveniences. Blake's best friend Danny noticed. Everyone did. Danny owned a small construction company and had known Blake since high school. He was the opposite of Blake in every way. Responsible, steady, quiet. He never criticized Blake directly, but he always showed up when Blake didn't. When Blake forgot to pick me up from the airport because Tessa wanted to go shopping, Danny came with coffee and an apology that wasn't even his to give. When Blake ditched me at one of his band shows because Tessa felt sick, Danny drove me home and asked if I was okay, like it actually mattered. I told Danny to stop worrying. I insisted Blake and I were solid. Danny just nodded and said he'd be around if I ever needed anything. That started to bother Blake. He began saying Danny was trying to steal me. He said nice guys were the worst because they pretended to care. He said I was naive if I couldn't see that Danny wanted to sleep with me. I defended Danny, but Blake said I didn't understand male intentions. Eventually, I stopped mentioning Danny at all just to avoid the fights. The night everything collapsed was supposed to be Blake's big break. His band had landed their biggest show yet at a venue downtown. I bought a new outfit. I invited my friends. I wanted to support him. Blake said Tessa would be there too because she was basically their unofficial manager, whatever that meant. I arrived early and noticed Blake's car already in the parking lot. I went backstage to wish him luck. That's when I found them. Tessa was on top of him in the green room. Both half-dressed, no confusion, no misunderstanding. Just reality hitting me in the face all at once. Blake looked up and said the words every cheater says. "It's not what it looks like." Tessa smirked. She actually smirked and said, "Now I understand why Blake keeps you around?" Blake tried to explain that she was just helping him relax before the show, that it meant nothing, that I was overreacting. Again, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I walked out. I went straight to the bar across the street and started taking tequila shots like they were water. 2 years collapsed into anger and humiliation and disbelief. I kept thinking about every time I doubted myself and how right my instincts had been all along. Danny showed up an hour later. Blake had texted their group chat saying I'd gone crazy and stormed off for no reason. Danny knew that wasn't true. He came looking for me. I was destroyed. Crying. Drunk. Apologizing for being stupid. Saying I should have listened. I remember Danny trying to get food into me. I remember throwing up in the parking lot while he held my hair. I remember him taking my phone when I tried to call Blake. I don't remember anything after that, but that night changed everything. I woke up with the kind of headache that feels personal, like my brain was punishing me for every bad decision I'd made the night before. My mouth was dry, my stomach twisted, and for a few seconds I didn't recognize where I was. The ceiling was unfamiliar. The sheets smelled clean, not like my apartment. Panic hit me all at once. Then I noticed the shirt. It was too big. Gray. Soft. And across the front in faded letters were the words, Henderson Construction. My heart dropped. I pushed myself up slowly, every movement making my head throb. That's when I saw the ring. Not an engagement ring. A thick, simple class ring sitting on my finger. Danny's grandmother's ring, the one he always wore on his pinky. For one terrifying moment, my brain filled in the worst possible assumptions. Then I noticed Danny. He was asleep on the floor next to the bed, wrapped in a blanket with a pillow tucked awkwardly under his head like he'd grabbed whatever he could find. The sight stopped my spiral instantly. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd barely slept at all. On the nightstand were a glass of water, aspirin, and toast on a plate. I sat there trying to piece together the night, my memories coming back in broken flashes. The bar. Tequila. Crying. Vomiting. Danny's hand steady on my back, then nothing. I must have made a sound, because Danny woke up immediately. He sat up fast, rubbing his eyes, his first words not defensive or awkward, but worried. "Do you feel like you're going to throw up again?" That question alone told me everything I needed to know. I asked what happened. I asked why I was wearing his shirt. I asked about the ring. Danny explained it all calmly, like he'd practiced the speech just in case. He said I'd been trying to call Blake over and over, so he took my phone away and handed me his ring to fidget with instead. Apparently, drunk me had decided it was prettier than anything Blake had ever given me, which wasn't hard, since Blake never gave me anything. Danny said I refused to give it back and clutched it like it was sacred. He said nothing happened between us. Not even close. He slept on the floor after making sure I was okay. And if I wanted proof, his sister was in the guest room. Right on cue, Lori walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. She confirmed everything. She checked on me every hour. Danny never left the floor. She said he was worried sick, and kept saying he should have warned me about Blake sooner. That's when I learned the part that made my stomach twist for an entirely different reason. Danny had known. Not right away, but for at least 6 months. He'd known Blake was sleeping with Tessa, and didn't know how to tell me without sounding like he was trying to break us up. He didn't want to be that guy. He chose silence instead. I didn't know how to feel about that. Angry. Grateful. Sad. All of it at once. While I was still processing that, my phone buzzed. Blake. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't apologize. He said I embarrassed him by making a scene at his show. He said Tessa was upset that I'd invaded their space. Their space. He said if I apologized to Tessa and accepted their relationship dynamic, we could work things out. I listened to the voicemail on speaker, while Danny pretended very hard not to hear from the kitchen. His jaw tightened anyway. Lori muttered something about Blake being delusional. I stared at the ring still on my finger. I told Danny I needed to call Blake back and break up properly. Danny suggested, very gently, that maybe I should eat something first, that big decisions were better made with a clear head. Lori slid a plate of pancakes in front of me and announced that drunk me had been hilarious the night before. Apparently, I'd held up Danny's ring and declared it prettier than anything Blake had ever given me. I'd refused to give it back. Danny said I could keep it as long as I wanted. I listened to Blake's voicemail again. This time, instead of feeling crushed, I felt angry. He made it sound like he was doing me a favor by considering taking me back. Like I was lucky he'd tolerate me after I caught him cheating. I called him back. He answered immediately, and launched into how glad he was that I'd come to my senses. I cut him off and told him we were done. Completely done. He could have whatever twisted arrangement he wanted with Tessa, but I was out. His voice flipped instantly. He said I was overreacting like always. He said I'd agreed to be understanding about their friendship. I hadn't agreed to being lied to. I hung up mid-sentence. Lori cheered. Danny tried not to smile and failed. That's when reality kicked in. Keys, belongings, logistics. Blake had a key to my place. I had one to his. Danny offered to come with me, so I wouldn't have to face Blake alone. Lori volunteered to stay at my apartment in case Blake showed up there. We finished breakfast. I borrowed Lori's clothes. Danny grabbed his keys. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't nervous about Blake's mood. I was done. The drive to Blake's apartment felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life through a car window. Normally, I'd be rehearsing what to say, worrying about whether he'd be angry, defensive, charming, or cruel. This time, I felt empty in a strangely calm way. Not numb, just done. Like something inside me had finally clicked into place and refused to go backward. Danny kept glancing at me from the driver's seat, asking if I was okay. I kept saying yes, even though I wasn't sure what okay meant anymore. What I knew was this: I didn't want to cry in front of Blake. I didn't want explanations. I didn't want closure. I just wanted my things and my dignity. When we pulled into the parking lot, Blake's car was already there. That didn't surprise me. What surprised me was how little it mattered. My stomach didn't drop. My heart didn't race. I just sighed. Danny parked and asked if I wanted him to come up with me. I said yes without hesitation, not because I was scared, but because Blake had spent 2 years convincing me my reactions were the problem. I wanted a witness this time. We knocked. Tessa opened the door. She was wearing Blake's shirt, and nothing else. Bare legs, bare feet. Smug expression. She leaned against the doorframe like she'd been waiting for this moment, like this was her victory lap. I held out Blake's key, and asked for my things. She laughed softly and said Blake had already taken them to my apartment. Apparently, he assumed I'd calm down and come crawling back once I realized what I was giving up. I asked her what exactly I was giving up. Her smile widened. She said I was giving up a guy who knew how to have fun and didn't expect women to be boring and jealous all the time. Danny stepped forward before I could say anything. His voice was calm but firm when he said we were leaving. Tessa called after us that Blake would be better off without someone as uptight as me. For the first time, I didn't feel insulted. I felt relieved. When we got to my apartment, the black trash bags were already there. They were lined up neatly against my door like I was a problem Blake had taken out. My clothes, my books, my things, stuffed into bags without care. Some of the bags were torn. Shampoo leaked into everything. My sweaters were wrinkled beyond saving. Lori was already there, pulling bags inside with fury written all over her face. She said she couldn't believe Blake had the nerve to treat my belongings like garbage. As I unpacked, I noticed something else. The 3 things Blake had ever given me in 2 years were gone. The cheap necklace, the joke coffee mug, the stupid keychain from one of his band's bars. He took them back. Not because they mattered, but because control did. Danny watched quietly while I sorted through the mess. Then he said softly that his grandmother's ring was still on my finger. It was, and it meant more to me than anything Blake had ever given me. My phone rang. Savannah from work. She'd already heard what happened. Apparently, news traveled fast. She asked if I was okay. I told her the truth. About the cheating, about the bar, about waking up at Danny's place. She didn't hesitate. She said she'd never liked Blake. Said the whole office thought I deserved better, but didn't want to interfere. She invited me to dinner that night with some coworkers. Said I needed to be around people who actually valued me. I agreed. That night, surrounded by pizza boxes, wine bottles, and women swapping cheating horror stories, something shifted. Hearing other people describe manipulative exes who rewrote reality made me realize how deeply Blake had messed with my sense of normal. Savannah said something that stuck with me. Blake wasn't special. He was predictable. Predictable liars always call their victims dramatic. Over the next week, I buried myself in work. Stayed late. Took extra assignments. Anything to avoid sitting alone with my thoughts. Danny checked on me every morning. Never pushed. Never hovered. Just showed up. Blake, meanwhile, lost his mind. Texts poured in. Long paragraphs about how I ruined his band's opportunity. About how Tessa understood him better. About how everyone was mad at him now because of me. I deleted every message without responding. Then came the final one. He said he'd consider taking me back if I posted an apology online. He wanted me to say I misunderstood his relationship with Tessa and overreacted. Publicly. That's when the sadness finally turned into something solid. Anger. I blocked his number right there. Danny smiled and said good. A few days later, he invited me to see his office. Henderson Construction. Real work. Real responsibility. His business partner Jasper and Jasper's wife Evelyn welcomed me like I already belonged. Evelyn pulled me aside and told me Danny had been in love with me for 2 years and never crossed a line because I was with Blake. That information sat heavy in my chest. I started noticing things. How Danny remembered my coffee order. How he listened when I talked about work. How he showed up. None of it was new. I'd just been too busy begging Blake to care. 2 weeks after leaving Blake, I ran into his band's drummer at the grocery store. He apologized. Told me everyone knew about Blake and Tessa. Told me Blake was telling people I cheated on him with Danny. I went home shaking. I posted the truth online. Simple. Calm. Clear. And the floodgates opened. Messages. Screenshots. Witnesses. Proof. Blake called screaming. I blocked him again. A month later, Danny asked me to dinner. Not as a rebound. Not as a savior. Just honest. Nervous. Real. I looked at the ring still on my finger and realized something important. I didn't wake up in love with Danny. I woke up free. Dinner with Danny wasn't dramatic. No big gestures. No speeches. And that alone made my chest feel lighter. He picked me up right on time, which still surprised me more than it should have. Blake had trained me to expect lateness, excuses, and apologies that came wrapped in attitude. Danny just showed up. The restaurant was a small Italian place downtown with soft lighting and windows that fogged up from the warmth inside. Danny kept fidgeting with his napkin while we waited for our food. folding and unfolding it like he had something important to say but didn't know how to start. I asked if he was okay, and he laughed nervously and said he was just a little anxious. That word, anxious, threw me. Blake never admitted to being nervous about anything. Danny being honest about his feelings felt new, refreshing, safe. Halfway through dinner, Danny finally said it. Evelyn had told him she spoke to me. He didn't look angry or embarrassed, just exposed. I told him I'd been thinking about what she said ever since. About how he'd been there for me in ways Blake never was. About how he remembered my promotion when Blake forgot. About how he drove me to the airport at 5 in the morning without complaining. About how he listened when I talked about work instead of zoning out. Danny reached across the table and took my hand. I noticed I was still wearing his grandmother's ring. Somewhere along the way, it had stopped feeling borrowed. We didn't rush into anything that night. No labels, no promises, just honesty. We agreed to take things slow and real. For the first time in years, slow didn't feel like settling. It felt like healing. Dating Danny was easy. Not boring, easy. He texted good morning. He asked how my day went and waited for the answer. When we made plans, they happened. If something came up, he told me. No disappearing acts, no emotional whiplash. The contrast hit me in small moments. Like when I had a stressful presentation at work and Danny sent flowers to my office. Not because I asked, just because he knew it mattered. Blake had never sent me flowers once in 2 years. My friends noticed immediately. Savannah said she'd known this would happen the moment she saw how Danny looked at me at that dinner party. The others agreed. They said Blake never deserved me, but Danny actually showed it. The real test came when I invited Danny to dinner with my parents. I hadn't realized how much anxiety I carried into relationships until that moment. I kept waiting for Danny to say something inappropriate or check out or act annoyed. Instead, he helped clear the table without being asked. He talked with my dad about work. He listened to my mom and laughed at the right moments. After dinner, my mom pulled me aside and said quietly, "This is what a real partner looks like." Something inside me cracked open. 3 months after leaving Blake, I realized I was genuinely happy. Not distracted. Not convincing myself. Just happy. Danny and I planned a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. We actually booked it. No cancellations. No excuses. I started counting down the days. One night, I noticed Blake's band was playing across town. I felt nothing. No curiosity. No jealousy. No urge to prove I was over it. Danny noticed me looking at my phone and asked if I wanted to go just to show I didn't care. I told him I didn't need to prove anything. He smiled and said that's when he knew I was free. We were sitting on his couch one night, an action movie playing in the background, when Danny said something that made my heart pause. He mentioned taking his grandmother's ring to a jeweler to have it properly sized, not just the class ring. I looked at him and understood what he was really saying. He told me he knew it might be fast, but he'd loved me for 2 years already. He said when you know someone is right, you just know. His voice didn't shake. He wasn't asking out of fear or desperation. He was asking out of certainty. I said yes before he finished the sentence. Not because I was running from Blake, but because I was running toward something real. I used to think closure would come with an apology, with Blake admitting he was wrong, or at least realizing what he lost. That never happened. And eventually, I realized I didn't need it. Real closure came quietly. It came in mornings where I woke up without checking my phone first. In evenings where I didn't feel anxious about saying the wrong thing. In weekends that didn't revolve around someone else's moods, emergencies, or excuses. Danny didn't just treat me better than Blake. He treated me like I mattered. At first I kept waiting for the pattern to repeat. I watched for signs. Missed calls, half-truths, that familiar feeling of being second place. But days turned into weeks, and nothing cracked. When Danny said he'd be somewhere, he was. When he was stressed, he communicated instead of disappearing. When I was overwhelmed, he didn't minimize it or redirect the attention back to himself. It felt almost uncomfortable how calm it was. One night, I realized something small but important. I hadn't once wondered who Danny was texting. Not because I forced myself not to, but because the thought never crossed my mind. Trust wasn't something I had to convince myself of. It was just there. Blake, on the other hand, kept unraveling from a distance. Mutual friends told me his band was falling apart. Venue owners didn't want to work with him anymore. Tessa was suddenly his girlfriend publicly, but privately, they fought constantly. Apparently, when the excitement of sneaking around disappeared, so did whatever made them interesting to each other. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that. I felt indifference. That was how I knew I was finally done. One afternoon, Blake tried to reach me again through a new number. He said he wanted to clear the air. He said he missed me. He said things weren't the same anymore, and maybe we'd both made mistakes. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it without replying. I didn't owe him clarity. He already had the truth. He just didn't like how it made him look. Life with Danny kept moving forward in ways that felt steady instead of rushed. We cooked dinners together. We argued sometimes, but fairly. No gaslighting, no rewriting history. When something hurt, we talked about it. When one of us messed up, there was accountability instead of blame. I stopped shrinking. At work, people noticed the change before I did. My boss commented that I seemed more confident in meetings. Savannah joked that dumping Blake did wonders for my spine. I laughed, but she wasn't wrong. I spoke up more. I stopped apologizing before making points. I trusted my instincts again. One night, Danny invited me over and handed me a small box. Inside wasn't an engagement ring. It was his grandmother's ring, professionally resized, polished, and placed carefully in velvet. He said he wanted me to have it officially, not as a promise of timelines or pressure, just as a symbol of what we were building. I cried harder than I expected. Not because of the ring, but because it was the first time someone gave me something meaningful without strings attached. A few weeks later, I ran into Tessa at a grocery store. She looked tired. Not smug, not victorious. Just normal. She barely looked at me. There was no confrontation, no drama. She didn't win anything. Neither did I. And that was okay, because this was never a competition. It was an escape. I realized how much of my old relationship was built on me trying to earn love. Be patient enough. Be understanding enough. Be cool enough to tolerate disrespect. Danny never asked me to earn anything. He chose me, openly and consistently. One night, as we sat on his couch watching a movie, Danny asked me a simple question. Do you ever miss him? I thought about it honestly before answering. I said no. I didn't miss the anxiety. I didn't miss the doubt. I didn't miss wondering if I was crazy for feeling hurt. I didn't miss being told I was insecure for expecting basic respect. What I missed wasn't Blake. It was the version of myself who thought love meant enduring pain. And I don't miss her anymore either. The morning Danny officially asked me to marry him wasn't dramatic. No crowd, no spotlight. Just us, coffee, sunlight through the kitchen window, and his voice shaking slightly as he asked if I wanted to keep choosing each other. I said yes without hesitation, not because it felt perfect, because it felt real. Later that day, Savannah hugged me and said, "You look lighter." She was right. I didn't wake up engaged to a ring. I woke up engaged to a life that finally fit. Looking back, I don't regret loving Blake. I regret doubting myself for so long. I regret staying silent when my instincts screamed. But I also know that version of me did the best she could with what she knew at the time. She wasn't weak. She was learning. If there's one thing I know now, it's this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And when someone shows up for you without being asked, notice that too. I didn't lose 2 years. I gained clarity, and I didn't wake up in my ex's best friend's bed by mistake. I woke up in the right life, because I finally chose myself.